The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, many thanks for anyone out there joining us today, where we're talking about a server to cloud migration. It's a hot topic at the moment for Atlassian Server customers, and joining us is Tom Cahalan from Aurora Commerce, a customer who is a long-time Atlassian Server and who we recently migrated to cloud. So you can actually get what the experience has been like from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So hi Tom, thanks for joining us today.
Not a problem, Chris. You even got my name right. I'm impressed.
I'm carefully reading it. So a quick touch on the agenda that we're going to cover. By the way, can everyone see the screen? I assume it does say that this is being shared across everyone. So please send us a chat if there's any problems. What we're going to cover today, a little bit of background on Aurora, why they decided to move. Then we're just going to talk about some of the differences between server and cloud and migration best practices. I get asked quite a few questions about the difference between server and cloud, and is migration an easy process or not? We'll talk about some of that, some of the gotchas, and then just cover in brief a little case study about how we did it for Aurora and what their experience now is of using cloud versus server, which they were on for many years. Very short bit about us, BDQ. We're a gold partner based in the UK. Our staff have got many years of experience with Atlassian products, service desk implementations, Azure, AWS, and importantly for this, doing migrations. We've migrated 1,000+ users of household names, who everyone on this call would probably know about, all the way down to SMEs. Some people have very complex situations, some people have simpler ones. Basically, we've done them all. One thing I would say is, whilst all the instances may have different characteristics, they are always very important to each customer, and we treat them all very carefully. So do you perhaps want to give a little bit of background just about Aurora, Tom?
Sure. Yep. So I'm the managing director and founder of Aurora Commerce. We're a SaaS e-commerce platform provider. We've been going about 11 years and got some really well-known high street customers. The largest one in the that people would know of is JD Sports, and we look after all of their outdoor fascias, such as Go Outdoors, Blacks, Millets. We use Jira really extensively, and we're a major Atlassian. They're a major partner of ours in terms of what they provide for us, because we use not just Jira, but Confluence, Jira Service Desk for our customer interaction. Separate to this as well, but we also use Bitbucket for managing all our code repositories. So that's that's a little bit about us.
You do, and obviously, Tom, you do a lot of development. You've got a lot of actually very highly skilled technical staff, haven't you? So
that is correct. Yeah, we used to manage the whole thing ourselves in-house, and this is really how all these conversations came around with Chris and BDQ, because yes, we have the skills to manage it ourselves, but did we really want to be doing that? Is that really a good use of our time to be doing it?
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, no, it's not. And I'm sure Chris will go into that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a bit later on. So suffice to say, you've been on the server platform for many years, using many of them extensively, and you decided, you wanted the focus to be about actually using the products rather than maintaining them and managing them.
Exactly. It was just a pain. We had customized ours quite a bit over the years, not anything extraordinary, but things like how emails were sent to customers. And every time you had to do an upgrade, we had to go through a whole path where we would have to go into a UAT environment, copy all the data across, upgrade it, spend a few days on it each time. And it just kept falling down the list more and more. As to really the time that we could spend doing this, until we then kept getting more and more out of date with a product that was very important to us.
Yeah, no, very interesting. I think this is something we are hearing quite a lot, and we're going to talk a little bit about Atlassian's recent push to cloud. So there's a number of good reasons why companies are going to cloud now, and we're seeing more and more. And in terms of the license management over the last few years, I've noticed we're cutting way fewer server licenses and way more cloud licenses. So that's There's been a definite, very distinct shift in behavior. So I'm going to discuss a little bit about the differences between cloud and server. So for a start, it may sound obvious, but it's not. Cloud is definitely not server. The two products are completely different. Now, back in the day, the very first versions of cloud were effectively just hosted versions of server, pretty much. But that is no longer the case. The cloud platform and associated apps are a completely new implementation and optimized for scale. Now, we've got very large enterprise customers using cloud very effectively in cloud, and Atlassian's pouring investment into the cloud platform. Features such as whitelisting and data sovereignty do now make it a viable choice for enterprise. But there are some slight differences, and these have to be taken account when you're considering a migration. I basically found myself explaining this very frequently to customers who came to me and said, actually, can we do a migration? So we got a graphic done to explain it. Because sometimes there's an assumption that migrating server to cloud is just really like doing another upgrade. The thing is, it isn't. The two platforms are different with different architectures. App vendors basically run services that are integrated over the internet using APIs, rather than Java plugins that can interact directly with a Java API and database, as was the case with server. So it's sort of more distributed stroke federated on the cloud than it was previously. Now, this means that apps many times have had to be completely re-implemented and may have different capabilities because the way they can interact with the core system is in fact different. So while sometimes there's an expectation it's a sort of plug and play or lift and shift, it's not. We're not just lifting server into the cloud, we're moving it to a different implementation. And some of the actual new apps are arguably better than what was on server, but they are nevertheless different. And when you're migrating, sometimes you may find that there is an equivalent app and actually the migration might be a problem. Other times we may find there's not an equivalent app, or maybe the app is equivalent in some ways, but it's missing some of the functionality or has different functionality. And some of the more complex apps have a lot of their own configuration and data within them. So you can sometimes think of this as lots of little mini application migrations. Now, this can actually sometimes be a good time to decide, actually, do you want to take all these across, or is there a better way of doing it, or should actually the intent just be re-implemented in cloud using some of the different technology there? But it's not basically a straight lift and shift, and complexity is really a sort of function of how much data you've got, how many users you've got, because obviously a 2,000 user system that has to be made live on a given day with everyone using it can be treated differently maybe to a 50 user system. But also if there's a large number of apps and a large number of customizations, scripts, custom fields and so forth that have gone into your server, and people are relying on that functionality and behavior, then this is going to have to be analyzed and considered how to move, because the platforms are not the same. Okay, so this is just something to take into account when we're planning these. Just going to cover that very, very short. For those of you that haven't seen cloud at all and you're thinking about this, your users get a slightly different experience when they log in. There's a new homepage, for example, which pulls together people's work. They can see recent projects and issues that they've recently interacted with. It's a good starting point, especially for new users who just want to log in and continue where they left off. In short, Atlassian have tried to make cloud as easy to use as possible. And they really are investing very heavily in it, and they're trying to move it away from a tool just for technical staff. This here, the old view is on the left-hand side, which is the server one, and the new view is on the right-hand side. And as you can see, the new view is a lot cleaner, but everything is still there. Some custom fields are now hidden on the right, but users can open them up and they can pin the ones they use frequently. Okay, so you can see more cluttered on the left, cleaner on the right. There is the proviso, obviously, that not all the information that you're expecting to be there is there, but it is still there and you can pin it. There are a couple of different choices now for cloud projects. So you may hear about this. There's classic versus next gen, depending if you've got this up in your global permissions, you'll be given the choice of which type of project you can create within Jira. Classic ones are the standard ones we're used to. They can be customized, configured, and controlled centrally. Next-gen projects are cloud only. They've got slightly fewer features or fewer opportunities to customize them, but they are very good for small teams who want to work autonomously and self-organize. Changing settings does not affect other projects. That's a key difference. One thing to note here, though, is you can't migrate next-gen projects back into Server because Server simply doesn't have these as a concept. You have to turn them into classic projects and then actually do a migration. A brief note here on Server end of life. I'm sure we've all got the emails about this now. Need to migrate is got more and more urgent. Atlassian strategy is firmly cloud first. They're actually going to stop selling Server and ultimately stop selling it altogether. If you want an on-prem product, you'll have to have a data center. And here are some of the key dates. Basically, as of 2nd of February, no new server licenses will be sold. If a quote has been created before the 2nd of February, Atlassian have informed me that that quote will be honoured up to its expiration date. So it is possible to hand the money over after the 2nd of February, but it will not be possible to get a new quote after the 2nd of February. Next year, you won't be able to do any more upgrades or downgrades. From 2023, you won't actually be able to buy new apps for your existing licenses, and after 2024, there'll be no longer support or bug fixes. And I think same for apps as well. So there is time yet, but if you're thinking of migrating, now is a good time to start considering it. I thought any of you looking at the video for this afterwards, there's some useful supporting material for those of you who want to do this yourself. There's Cloud Migration Center. It's got lots of good stuff in it. You can get free cloud migration trials now if you actually want to try cloud out for making the jump. And appreciate for larger organizations, the migration period can actually be several months where you're trying this. So it's a very, very helpful that this is being provided. Atlassian themselves provide a really useful migration guide. There is a migration assistant, which is an app from Atlassian. It's very, very helpful, but it doesn't migrate everything. They are constantly improving it. But as of at least recently, it didn't migrate boards. Can move single projects though, and you can choose users. It doesn't take all custom fields and it doesn't take service desk. Or it didn't. Just keep checking it because they're improving it all the time. But again, it's not a lift and shift, and of course, it doesn't take account of apps. We provide our own migration and Analyst add-in, which is completely free. It basically creates a bunch of useful stats that help us size migrations for customers, and you can just use it yourself if you want to get a feel for your data volumes and number of plugins and so forth. In fact, we've had customers comment to us they hadn't realized how many plugins they actually had until they ran it. Okay, that's the Migration Assistant page, and you can be found in the marketplace. That's Atlassian's own one. As you notice, it's a free app. You can just get it, run it and use it to try and migrate stuff across. But as I say, do check the documentation about what gets migrated and what doesn't. And that's our own Migration Analyst. If you just look for that in the App Store, download it. As you can see that you can basically, I'll just click on the pointer. It will come up under Manage Apps, it will come up in the list of applications. Just click on it. You get either JSON or CSV. You can download the CSV and send it to us at inquiries@bdq.cloud, and we'll give you a quote for migrating. There is an issue, which I'll talk later about gotchas. You can't have any duplicate email addresses in here because email addresses got to be unique for going to cloud. So there is an additional feature which helps you find out if you have any, which is often the case. You need to resolve that during the migration process. So a couple of quick slides on actually how we deal with migrations. If it's a quick one, if we basically by looking at your analyst output, we can determine actually it's a relatively straightforward process, or you're a smaller organization, it's generally 4 stops. The key thing is always that we do user acceptance testing, and if you're doing that yourselves, I would always suggest do a UAT process on the cloud solution before you make it go live. In terms of enterprise, if the data volumes are high, or there's many users, or there's actually a lot of complexity in terms of apps and configuration, at this point, might be many staff involved, possibly working globally, with no equivalent add-ons, as we talked about earlier. You may need SSO and Atlassian Access. Then there's a larger number of people involved. Communication is critical. UAT may involve many users all using different areas of the system, and all stakeholders need to be informed of dates and stages in the process. We'll have to create a data migration runbook to understand the process, make sure it works smoothly, understand how long it will take so that we can actually accurately calculate go lives. For this, we would probably use a dedicated separate Confluence, Jira, and Jira Service Management instance outside of this process, just to manage project docs, migration tasks, and UAT feedback. Maybe something, if you're considering a larger one, something for you to consider. Collaboration, very important. You don't want to just flick the switch, turn it on, find there's a problem with the migration, or your users get something that they don't expect. Bit about gotchas. You should think of duplicate emails, definitely to be avoided. Cloud requires unique emails for user IDs. The email is the user ID. With Server, you may recall, actually you could have a user name, which was the user ID. You can use our add-on to get reports if you've got any of these, and if it's going to be a problem. User management, there is no more LDAP. So back in the day, each instance, be it Confluence or Jira or anything else for that matter, could integrate directly with Active Directory, typically, or any other LDAP provider, directly and free of charge. And each instance would do that on a one-by-one basis. So you could achieve SSO, single sign-on, using Active Directory. Now, to do SSO in the cloud, you have to use Atlassian Access, and that is a separate product, and it is licensed by the number of users that you wish to register in it. And then it will cover all instances within an organization, basically. So you can then have many Jira or Confluence instances all enjoying SSO, which is directly connected to your Active Directory, which is typically the case, Azure Active Directory, I should say. This uses SAML. It's a different architecture. It's definitely something to look out for. If you're used to SSO now and you want to continue that, you're going to have to have a cloud-based SSO solution, which I say typically if you're using AD, you would go to Azure AD, and then you'll need to buy this Access as a separate product. Another thing to think about, large data volumes and upload speeds. It can take a long time if you've got a big instance to get all the data up to Atlassian. One of our suggestions would be to use AWS or Azure, as they've got a huge, huge pipe, and that can really help with your data transfer timings. As I talked about earlier, check out app equivalent and upgrade paths. Okay, and Migration Assistant, as we talked, does not move everything. Worst case, you may be inside the XML backup, editing it to get things across. But that is now, I'm glad to say, a rarer event than it used to be. But you have to test these things. Do not expect it just to work in one go. Very important to do a test migration, and then you can use that for your UAT. A few other things, user expectations. Well, as I've said here, cloud and server are not identical, so do lay the groundwork before. The apps aren't identical either. Make sure the users know what they're going to get, so they are happy and not disappointed. Do check out any integrations you're using. People often aren't necessarily aware of everything their Jira instance is doing. What is it integrating with? What interfaces is it using? Will these interfaces work with the public cloud? All things you should take into account. If you're doing a larger instance, do inform Atlassian support of your migration date. That will help you smooth the path, and they will, if they know your support window, they can give you a hand with the migration. Other things to know about: if you want to do whitelisting, security is an issue for you. You need the premium version. So as it stands, with the public regular standard version, you can log into it, from any device and download things, download attachments. If you want to limit that, say, to a corporate network, then you need the premium version. Okay. If you want data sovereignty, you need the enterprise version. And data, as some of you may be aware, Atlassian moves the data around between EU and the US, basically as it sees fit. It's actually all AWS pretty much underneath. Some people aren't keen on it being hosted in the US. For example, federal authorities have got greater powers to sort of peer into one's data. So enterprise is very new, but it lets you pin your data to a particular region. So you can pin it to either the US or the EU, so you know where it will be hosted. There's a whole set of descriptions about precisely what that entails and what gets pinned, but basically it's all the important stuff. App providers are right now, many of them, looking at how to best support this so they can follow that in suit. Okay, but the days where you could just host it yourself, if you go to cloud, that's gone. The only way to choose where it goes is to get the enterprise version, and then you can pin between the two choices. And finally, test, test, and test again. So that's a few notes which I hope you find helpful on that. Now, a little bit about yours, Tom. Your process, as I recall, you Jira Software, Confluence, Jira Service Desk, and Tempo. You had a whole bunch of things we moved across, and it was hosted on AWS, wasn't it?
That's correct, yes.
So I think, for you, we did a fixed process, a fixed price and accelerated process, but you had a lot of important data in there. Your customers using your service desk. I think we checked the stats with you first to make sure we could do a fixed price. Basically, if I recall, you actually estimated how long you'd take it to do internally, and you found it would have been cheaper to do it with us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's first of all, just straight out yes, but also you then have to look at it from a business perspective and go, this is a one-off cost to us. It's a one-off process. Do we want to have someone trained up to do this versus just doing their day job? And to be honest, that in itself was more important than the financial side, but the fact that it worked out cheaper to use yourselves and us to do it internally by having to go through all that training process made it, no-brainer.
Oh, no, thank you. It is sometimes people, I think, well, I've tried to highlight on the previous slides, people do sometimes underestimate what's involved, because it's not necessarily obvious that it is in an entirely different sort of implementation. Actually, it's not just like a straight upgrade. A little bit extra on this. I just wanted to talk to you. How have you found the experience of using cloud, and would you go back to server?
Definitely wouldn't go back to server, because the benefits that all come with us just not having to look after it at all anymore. And I do find Atlassian, they're not perfect. Let's not lie, they're not perfect. But the amount of upgrades they do and new features that they come out with, you frequently log in and go, they've done that, they've added that, and it's just seamless, which is the same as our own software work. So it's just very, very good to see it. So in terms of change, as with anything, you move from a system where we've been managing it ourselves, you move to the cloud, and definitely there are teething problems that we had to get through. But I think I said to you at the time, Chris, that we went live with this after doing all the testing that you mentioned. And I think after the first day of launch, we never needed anything from you again, which was just a great testament. I semi-joke and say that my perfect support partner is one I never ever have to speak to. So that's always a perfect thing out of it. The only points you touched on already are the plugins and getting them migrated over. It was quite surprising actually to find that Tempo did migrate quite well in the end. It wasn't all planned, but it actually did. Script Runner is one that we use where we had to just get rid of it. We were only using it for some basic stuff, but the version on cloud just didn't match the same functionality on server. So we just had to find some workaround to that instead. But otherwise, it's just so much better to be on the cloud solution. And I would also say from a costing perspective, I might have this wrong, but my understanding before, for example, with Jira Service Desk, was you always had to buy it in proportion to how many Jira licenses you had, whereas we don't need most of the company to have a Jira Service Desk license. We need a few people to have it. So when you look at monthly hosting costs, we don't have any more from us not paying AWS for it, as well as being able to change the licensing structure to what we need it to be. It wasn't just cheaper to move from hiring BDQ to do the migration. It's actually cheaper for us to be on the cloud anyway than it was as a server. So overall, pretty good.
Oh, very good. Yeah. And actually, for anyone listening, yes, Jira Service Management is licensed by agent, which you can buy annually or by month. So yes, Tom, you can flex up and down. And Jira software is by user. So agents and users are separate. Agents specific Jira Service Management, and customers for the support for Jira Service Management are indeed free of charge. I'll just put that quick plug in case anybody from Atlassian is just listening in about how we've discussed the licensing. So that is, yeah, I'm glad. Well, it is. I'm glad you found it more flexible and cheaper to use, actually, and it is a really good product. I mean, it's come on in leaps and bounds actually since it was first released, and it's getting more and more powerful. Like we're just doing a service desk implementation for someone, and example, new feature they brought out is service management, so you can have a catalog of services along with approvals and so forth. It's just new stuff being introduced all the time. And that's really why in the end they decided, I think, to stop selling server licenses, because they want to be straight with customers and say, well, look, the investment really is going on cloud in the future. So I know some people worry about moving, but it's good to hear from an actual real life customer like yourself that actually you've done the move and you prefer it and to where you were. So that's good. Well, look, in summary, as we just heard from Tom, you can move to cloud, and it's actually a better solution in many cases. As you know, if you really want to stay on-prem, data center is still an option. I do appreciate there's some customers out there, for example, for whom security and ownership of data is absolutely paramount, and for you, data center is still available. Just bear in mind, when you're doing a migration, all instances are different. Complexity can pop up in different places. You might have a small instance, but if you've got a whole vast amount of script runner scripts on there, heavily integrated with workflows, that might be quite tricky to migrate. So each one needs to be taken on its own merits. Do read all the Atlassian and all the app vendor documentation really thoroughly, so you know what you're doing, and test as well. And if for larger instances, yeah, communication management with your user community is really important. If you'd like us to do it, please get in contact and we'll give you a fixed price wherever it's possible. And whether you want us to do it or not, if you take a look at our Migration Analyst app, it gives you some useful stats on what you're actually dealing with. So test, and test again. And many thanks for your time. We're coming up to the half hour. I'd like to thank you, Tom, for joining us with this. It's really good to have the input of an actual real customer who can properly compare the two solutions, cloud and server, and say how they found them. So yeah, many thanks. And if you've got any e-commerce needs, look up Aurora Commerce.
Good. Thanks, Chris. Good plug at the end there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for attending. All the best. And if there's any questions, please do get in touch with us afterwards. Thanks a lot.